You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There are latest things that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. We certainly appreciate it. As always, the Chris Voss Show is a family that loves you, but doesn't loan you money, so stop asking for it. In fact, I need some of my coffee refill. Go to buymeacupofcoffee.com, or actually just buymeacoffee.com/Chris Voss. You can do that. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss. Chris Voss, one of the TikTokity, all those crazy places on the internet. As always, we have the most amazing, hottest authors coming off of the publishers' machined out, I don't know, I was trying to say some sort of imaginary cool visual, but I have none. So I'm just going to describe the fact that I don't have shit, and I'm just going to roll with that. I had this whole like manufacturing line thing going out and everything else, so I don't know. Hopefully I'm still there. So there you go. So anyway, guys, we have an amazing young man on the show. We're going to be talking about his incredible life story, his journey through tragedy to triumph and all that good stuff. I'm finally finding my footing here on adjectives. Mike Africa Jr. is on the show with us today. His book is just out August 6, 2024. It is called On a Move, Philadelphia's Notorious Bombing and a Native Son's Lifelong Battle for Justice. And if you're not gripped by the conversation we're going to have here, hold on tight or hold on to something, because it's going to be gripping. It's a great story. So Mike is going to be joining us to talk about his book. He is a sought-after speaker and writer who has been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, The Guardian, and on NPR. He starred in the HBO documentary 40 Years a Prisoner and was featured in the Audible original docuseries about the Move bombing, summer of 1985, produced by Kevin Hart and Charlemagne the God, and narrated by Hart. As a keynote speaker, Mike has been invited to speak any and everywhere, from the Smithsonian and the University of Pennsylvania to the 55th anniversary of the Black Panther Party. Welcome to the show, Mike. How are you?
Oh, man, thanks for having me. I feel great today. It's a good day.
There you go. It's wonderful to have you. It's a great day. Every day is above ground's a great day. Is that how it works these days?
Well, I didn't put it to the every day is above ground is a good day. My thing is happiness is a choice.
There you go.
You got to create the structure for your happiness, and I've done that, so I feel good.
I love it. Well, thanks for bringing that to the show and giving us the pump up there. Give us your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
www.mikeafricajr.com.
There you go. And
and of course, like on social media, is at Mike Africa Jr. on my Instagram and Facebook and Twitter.
There you go. Is Kevin Hart as short as everyone says he is?
I've never met Kevin Hart.
Okay.
The process was that I recorded from my Bakerstown sound studio in West Philly. In Center City, Philly, and he did his wherever he did his. So we never actually got to meet. We talked on the phone once, but that was it.
It was a short phone call? Oh, I'm just kidding. Anyway, he's a great guy, wonderful comedian. So give us a 30,000 overview of your new book that's just out, On a Move.
The book is about as the subtitle says, the lifelong battle for justice. My parents were in prison. They were in prison before I was alive. I was born in a jail cell.
Wow.
And when I got a little older, by a little older, I mean 13 years old, I started working to free them. And it took a long time to do it.
There you go. And so this is about this bombing that took place where there was activists in the building and et cetera, and they burnt down like a whole city block, these crazy cops with Philadelphia. And this kind of was probably something that helped kind of wake people up to some of the abuses that were going on in America at the time in the civil rights era. But you run close to this. Tell us about who Move is and how you were related to these folks.
The Move organization was founded by my great uncle. His name is John Africa. He started the organization with a simple mission to protect life, people, animals, and the environment. He talked about the injustices of people being locked in cages and given unnecessary, lengthy prison terms for crimes that politicians and police were committing and not getting any time in jail at all. He talked about the inequality of it. He talked about how animals were brought to this country the same way Africans were brought to this country in chains and crates and made to work and be enslaved for money. He would say things like, if Barnum and Bailey and Ringling Brothers think that it's okay for a tiger cub to jump through a ring of fire, why don't they make their cubs do it? Why don't they make their wife do it? You know, animals have feelings too. He also talked about the environment and the importance of protecting it and honoring and nurturing it, you know, by giving back. Composting wasn't a thing back then, but that's exactly the type of work that he did. And a lot of opposition in that process. And he also met a lot of people that believed the way that he believed and wanted to support what he was doing. And that group of people that followed him became known as Move.
Okay. And so that's your, what'd you say? Your
My great uncle.
Great uncle.
Yeah.
So that's your great uncle. You're living in the house with them or in the block with them?
Well, I wasn't born yet. He started the organization in 1972.
Okay.
And my mother, my father, a lot of other members of my family, like half the organization is my blood family. My grandmother, my great aunts, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, and they were all part of it in the very early 70s. And then as time went on, my mom, and my dad are together, and they conceived me.
There you go. Do they have the same sort of stance that maybe Malcolm X? We mentioned the other folks that I know had a pretty violent streak. The Black Panthers, where they felt like violence was the way to even the score or to try and balance out the score.
Well, Move was a little bit different, not in the stance perspective, but definitely in the way people see violence. Move didn't see defending yourself as violent. They didn't see if the police attack you or if anyone attack you for that matter, we don't turn the other cheek, and we don't see defending ourselves as violent. If you slap me, you might walk over here and do it, but you're gonna limp back. I mean, that's just the way it is. Like you're not gonna slap, and I don't see that as being violent. I see you as being violent for attacking me unwarranted. Yeah. But me defending myself from that, no, I don't see that as violent. Move didn't see that.
You're defending yourself,
Yeah, and that's what the Panthers were doing. The Panthers weren't going around killing people. They were defending the people that were being killed by the police.
Wow.
So, Move was very much like that. The organization wasn't set up like on a pacifist vibe, like Dr. King with the turn the other cheek. Not at all. And having that kind of stance, both of them still were attacked. Whether you were a pacifist, you saw the 60s videos and news clips where the pacifists who were not fighting back were being hosed down by the fire departments and beaten by police and attacked with dogs, right? So, if you're going to get attacked anyway, why not fight back and get a couple licks in yourself?
There you go. So now, you were 6 when this whole episode happened where the police attacked the Move folks. You said you were born in jail. Tell us about how that went down.
So Move people would protest and demonstrate at like the Philadelphia Zoo and the Barnum and Bailey Ringling Brothers Circus. And when the cops would come and tell them they had to disband, Move would resist and say things like, we got the right to freedom of speech. We got the right to assemble. We're not breaking any law, so we're not leaving. And the police ran by the mayor, Frank Rizzo, was like, well, we don't care what you say your laws are. You're going to jail. And it led to Move people resisting being arrested sometimes, Move people fighting in scuffles. Eventually, a confrontation happened on August 8th, 1978, where the police stormed Move's home and shot up the house. During the shooting, a police officer was shot and killed. Of course, Move was blamed for the killing, and they all got 100-year sentences, a total of 900 years in prison. Wow. And my parents were 2 of those people. And at the time of the arrest, my mother was 8 months pregnant with me. So 5 weeks later, I was born in a jail cell.
Wow. That's a hell of a story. So when you get out of school, I'm trying to nail down, explain to people the timeline. When you get out of school, when you get out of jail, Who's taking care of you over the next few years that you're being raised around the move unit before the bombing happens?
My grandmother was taking care of me.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother, my aunts, and uncle, they were making sure that I was okay, feeding me, taking care of me.
Wow.
And when I was 13 years old, my circumstances at home wasn't great.
Yeah.
My grandmother was older. I was one of those unruly kids that wasn't willing to listen to people,
Mm-hmm.
and I broke her rules all the time, and she felt like I needed to return to move. So when Ramona Africa, who was one of the move members who was recently getting out of prison, I asked her to come and pick me up, and she did, and I rejoined move.
There you go. So when you said this happened when you were 6. Were you in the building at the time of the attack? Were you around? Did you experience what that was like?
I was 4.4 miles away,
Uh-huh.
and I could see the smoke.
Wow.
How I learned about it was it was a summer day or or late spring day. It was warm outside,
Mm-hmm.
and I was going outside to play with some friends. And one of my friends, he said they dropped a bomb on move.
Wow.
And my immediate reaction was, no, they didn't. And he pointed to the sky.
Wow.
And then I ran in the house and I saw my aunts and I saw them huddled up around the television and crying their eyes out.
Wow.
I saw the fire on the television. I could see the blazing fire just erupting out of the windows and through the roof.
Wow.
And I said, that looks like our house. And my aunt looked at me and she said, it is our house.
That is wild. So 11 members were killed in that attack. I imagine some were members of your family?
Every single person that died that day
Wow.
were MOVE members. My great uncle who started the organization, John Africa, he was there. My second cousin, Frank, and all of the children that I knew that I grew up with in MOVE were all in the house.
Wow. That's quite the loss to take as a young person. That's quite the shocking thing to take.
Well, the interesting thing about it was at the time I didn't know that.
Okay.
When
you didn't know they were dead, right?
When Ramona, I'm 6 years old. I mean, how do you explain to a 6-year-old that this thing happened? The people, my aunts and them, they were young people. They were in their 20s. They couldn't even really wrap their minds around what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the way I learned about the story, the details, when Ramona Africa took me with her around the world, talking to audiences, universities and classrooms and community centers, she would be telling the story to the audience. And as they were learning the story, I was learning the story too.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't find out about what happened. I didn't even know that I was born in a jail cell until then. I didn't know that there were newspapers writing articles about this kid, this MOVE baby that was born in a jail cell until Ramona came and got me. And then I started like doing research myself. Mm-hmm. I didn't know my parents were in prison for 100 years each.
Wow.
Until I started traveling around. I didn't know what they were in prison for.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if they would ever get out. But I did believe through the research that I had done that they were innocent and that I would try to see how I could help to get them out.
There you go. And so at what point, you mentioned you were kind of a troubled kid a little bit. You weren't listening to your grandmother or whoever. Was there a point that you crossed the threshold and you go, I'm going to work to right the wrongs of what's been done against my family and my parents, and you start working to learn law to get your parents out of jail?
When I was 13 years old, I was in a meeting with a lawyer by the name of Paul Hetznecker. Mm-hmm. He was going to be MOVE's new lawyer. And regularly, we were scheduled to have meetings with him to discuss strategy and ways to get them out of prison. And I was a part of those initial meetings. I was a part of the meeting where he was chosen to be MOVE's counsel over William Kunstler at the time. Mm-hmm. And I traveled around and we rallied for support and we wrote letters and met with politicians. And, the legal strategy was to get favorable attention and favorable support from people that had the power to make changes. Oh. And I was a really big part of that process because I was the son of two of these people and the nephew of one of them. So a third of the people that were in prison were my blood family.
Wow.
And I was just a kid whose life, whose prison the prison sentence predated my birth. It was a
Wow.
really huge selling point
Yeah.
for our supporters. And even with that, though, if a white police officer is killed, and the people that are accused of doing it is a bunch of unruly black people, the odds are heavily stacked against us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it took a lot of work, it took a lot of networking, and it took a lot of connecting with people that felt that they could help, but wanted to help. You had to, it's one thing for people to be able to help, it's another thing for them to want to help.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to just, continue to chip away at the mountain of the people that could help and kind of convert them into wanting to be supported.
There you go. And so eventually you got your parents freed. How many years did it take?
I started working on that when I was 13 years old. By
Mm-hmm.
then, they had spent 13 years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
I picked up my mother on June 16, 2018. She had spent 40 years in prison.
40 years. Wow.
40 years.
Wow.
And then 4 months later, I went to the prison and I picked up my dad, who had been released. Just
Wow.
like 40 years too.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Mayor Frank Rizzo's mayor of Philadelphia at the time was so corrupt. I mean, the guy had some real white nationalist Christian sort of extremist issues. He didn't like anybody who wasn't white, I guess,
Yeah.
was basically his thing. And so
I don't think he liked anybody that, I think he only liked Italians.
probably from the mob, right?
Not even just white.
Yeah.
Italians, he liked Italians. That was it.
There you go. He built a reputation for hostility to blacks, Latinas, and civil rights demonstrators. And so he was all about white ethnics groups. Total Christian nationalism sort of dude, right wing. Let's hope we don't have that come back next year. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. And they pretty much attacked one house and they bombed it, and they pretty much burned down a whole city block. I think they burn down more than a city block.
They burned down 3 roads.
Yeah.
So there was a total of 61 homes and 250 people homeless.
Wow.
This is what happened. The people that were the MOVE members that hadn't been arrested when my parents got arrested,
Mm-hmm.
they continued to speak about the imprisonment of the MOVE 9 prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
And they made so much noise and they created so many disruptions that the city felt like they needed to do something to shut them up.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing MOVE with the type of reputation that MOVE has for fighting back and resisting injustice and arrests and all of that, I guess they felt like they needed to come with as much firepower as they could. So they went to the military.
Yeah.
They went to the military and they got Brigadier General and made him the managing director. They got a Korea War veteran and Vietnam general and made him the police commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
Then, with those connections, they got their hands on C4, plastic explosives. They got their hands on anti-tank guns, 50 caliber machine guns, armor-piercing guns. They got their hands on M16s, M14s, M1s, every kind of weapon that you can imagine the United States was using during war times. And then on May 13th, 1985, MOVE members were in their house and they were yelling from a bullhorn to free MOVE 9 prisoners. And the city's response to that was to fly a helicopter over the house and drop a bomb on it. The bomb ignited a fire. The fire burned down 61 homes.
Jesus.
As MOVE members tried to escape the burning building, they were shot at by police.
I remember watching the video of this, and I don't remember what I was up to, but I was watching the video of it, and it was quite extraordinary. It was just insane. And one of these things that probably, tried to help wake people up to how bad racism it was in this country, especially back then. It's still here today, of course. What do you hope people come away with reading your account, your story, your parents' story, your family's story? What do you hope people come away with?
Well, there's two things. One, this is a story of resistance. I mean, despite all of the tragedy that Move experienced, despite all of the issues that I ran into in trying to free my family,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, we were very successful in releasing my mother, my father, and my uncle Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that positive aspect of it. A 40-year long journey came to an end, and they came out on their own 2 feet instead of laying down.
Yeah, that's pretty
And
good.
the other thing about it, though, is that I want people to come away with it is there needs to be accountability, some type of way for law enforcement to be held accountable for the crimes they committed against humanity.
Mm-hmm.
5 children were shot,
Wow,
burned.
kids.
Kids, I mean, 14, 12, 11, 9 kids, children. And none of the police commissioner that put shrapnel in a bomb. First of all, dropping a bomb in the neighborhood is crazy.
Yeah, that is.
But to then lace the bomb with shrapnel so that it maims anyone that it hits when it explodes is just evil.
Yeah, that's just
The police
beyond
commissioner
evil.
never saw the inside of a jail cell. He never was placed in handcuffs. He was
Wow.
never in the back of a paddy wagon. The
Yeah.
fire commissioner that let the fire burn, knowing that this fire is raging out of control, it reached to the point of 2,000 degrees, the temperature at which steel melts.
Wow.
And they said, let the fire burn.
Wow.
And he never saw the inside of a jail cell. He never felt the cold steel of handcuffs on his wrists. He never spent any time in the back of a paddy wagon. And then the managing director and the mayor who participated in this entire process for this assault to be carried out, no one ever served 1 day in jail,
Wow.
not 1 second. The only I guess semblance of wrongdoing that anyone could see that the police were feeling is that Terrence Mulvihill, one of the police officers that was stationed in the back alley, that never admitted to shooting people as they tried to escape the burning building, but he did kill himself shortly after the bombing.
Oh, really? With the guilt was just too much, huh?
I would expect that the guilt on him was heavy and he couldn't live with himself anymore.
Yeah.
But I don't think that killing yourself is an indication that you felt like you did the right thing.
That's very true.
But
That's very true.
we talk about reparations a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about this thing called qualified immunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that needs to be talked about more.
Yeah.
Police officers, law enforcement, public officials should not be able to get away with crimes, especially when children are involved and being shot and killed. They should not be able to get away. I can't get away with that.
Yeah.
We're talking about equality. The people that are supposed to be protecting people from injustice, protecting people from harm, they should be held to an even higher standard.
Yeah. I'm hoping that George Floyd maybe set a bar. I remember the surprised look on his killer's face when he really thought he was going to get off. At least that's my impression of when I watched his face. He was in shock that he got found guilty, and I think it was a good moment that sent a shockwaves across police unions and stuff. That like, hey, you need to start paying attention to what's going on and training people better. And there's so much that goes into it, but this is why your stories like yours are important. It's such a great story. Did you guys end up suing the city after your parents got out?
The city of Philadelphia was brought up on. The city of Philadelphia was in a battle with Ramona Africa, the lone adult survivor of the bombing.
Mm-hmm.
And she sued the city. She sued the managing director, the mayor. She sued the fire commissioner and the chief of police.
Wow.
Every single one of them were found guilty, and the jury found them guilty. The judge granted them all immunity, and therefore they served no punishment for what they did.
Huh. Was it civil or criminal?
It was civil.
Oh, okay. Huh. So
And
no money was awarded or anything like that for damages?
the Ramona was awarded $500,000.
Wow, that's all.
That same year, I bet you remember this. A lady was driving through a McDonald's.
Yeah, the $10 million
hot
verdict.
coffee on herself, and she won millions of dollars
Yeah,
for spilling hot coffee on herself.
that she knew was hot.
A hot fire that burned 11 people alive, and the settlement was $500,000.
Yeah, that's just insane. That's just insane, that whole thing. Well, there you go. Well, it's a wonderful story, a beautiful story of loss and redemption. And, for you as a son, you could have just been like, I'm going to go be bad and probably end up in prison with with family. I could turn to crime and stuff. But you went the high road and looked to right the justice, the violence and justice, that was not given your family, and right the wrong there. And so, props to you, man. I mean, it's quite the journey, and it took a long time. You stuck it out, and now you got a great story. I think it would be a great movie. People need to hear more about this thing. I don't remember how I heard about it, but watching the video is just extraordinary to watch. And then the fire gets out of control, and the people are just, it's just shocking that something like that would take place in America. But we like to. Hey, this is America. We like to invent stuff. So
and I'll say, Chris, if people aren't being held accountable for their actions, this won't be their last tragedy like this.
That's true. No one should be above the law in this country. That's kind of the whole point of it. But we're still working on that point.
There you go.
There you go. So give us your .coms as we go out. Tell people where they can find you on the interwebs and get to know you better.
Come and see me on my Instagram page. That's the page that I'm on the most. My Instagram is @MikeAfrica I'm also on Twitter and Facebook, and you can purchase the book. There's a link in my bio where you can purchase the book. We had a book signing for it yesterday because yesterday was the 46-year anniversary of the day that police took my parents to prison, and we're selling books right now. It's available on Amazon, Target, Barnes and Noble. And of course, you can get all of that link to all of those places if you want at my website, www.mikeafricajr.com.
There you go. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Mike, and sharing your amazing story of your family and the battle and for justice and all that stuff. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
There you go. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss One, the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.